Hi, everyone. Welcome to Song Tripping. I'm Jim. In today's episode, we're going to do a shootout. We're going to look at another side of Bob Dylan. And this is the mono vinyl copy, OG vinyl, up against the original CD release, up against the Mobile Fidelity original master recording in stereo, up against the Bob Dylan original mono recordings box set. Let's get right down to the shootout. I have opinions on this. I have thoughts. We'll see what you think, and I'd love to hear your comments, what you think about this album and the different versions. I should say there's a couple versions I do not have. I do not have the SACD stereo that Sony released in the early 2000s, and I don't have the Mobile Fidelity original master recording mono. But I think I have enough variety here to make some interesting comparisons. So here's another side of Bob Dylan. This was recorded in June of 1964 in one day, and it was his fourth studio album. There was the eponymous Bob Dylan, then the freewheeling Bob Dylan, then the Times They Are A-Changin', and another side of Bob Dylan. And in this album, which was released in August of 1964, it did show another side of Bob Dylan somewhat. So whereas the previous album, The Times They Are A-Changin', was focused on folk and protest songs, sort of had a dark tone to it. This one is a little bit lighter in tone, and he's stretching out into some new territory. But it also has a feel of a very sort of tossed off, hastily recorded album, and it's not the best sounding Bob Dylan record. Let's go through the tracks real quickly. All I Really Want to Do is a favorite, but you can hear distortion on that track in the vocal in parts. But it's a very melodic song, and it's a fun one. Black Crow Blues is one of the many throwaways I think on this album. I like the piano blues he's playing. I like Bob Dylan's piano style. He's a plunker and a pounder, but there's not much to say about this song. Spanish Harlem Incident, I think, is a deep track. I really like it quite a bit. It's sort of about a fortune teller and his fondness for this person, and it's just very sort of emotive. Chimes of Freedom is one of the protest style songs, very poetic, and I Shall Be Free number 10 is somewhat of a another throwaway, I would say. This is in his kind of talking blues character voice, but it's fun. It's got some good silly lines to it. To Ramona is a real album highlight. I would rank that right up there among the best on this set. Lovely song to a woman, and kind of empathizing with her and whatnot. Motorcycle Nightmare is another sort of silly story song. A lot of fun. I think this is anticipating some of the kind of songcraft that he'll get into on the next album, bringing it all back home. My Back Pages is another highlight of the album. Just a beautiful statement of where he's at in his life and his career. You can really get the sense here that he's transitioning to yet another side, a new face. My Back Pages was covered so well by the Byrds too. I Don't Believe You is another track I really like on this album. It's melodic. It has like sort of a pop feel to it. I get the feeling like on tracks like All I Really Want to Do and I Don't Believe You and It Ain't Me Babe that he's starting to reach into like pop melodies. And I think there's a lot of great rhythmic drive on that song. Ballad in Plain D is another deep track that I think is very, very well done, although it has a very sort of slow pace to it, but some really poetic lines. It's sort of like this triangle between the speaker and two sisters and lyrics, and has one of the great last verses in a Bob Dylan song. It Ain't Me Babe was a hit, I guess, for Dylan. I'm not sure how it charted, but it does have a single feel to it, and then other people covered it and had hits with it too. Again, this is sort of more the pop side, and it's a great breakup song. That's another side of Bob Dylan. It suffers in comparison to the previous two albums, I think. I do think it's superior to his debut album. You could argue like the Freewheelin' and Times are 5-star albums. This is maybe more of a 3 or 4-star album. Let's show you the Two-Eyed Mono label. And this is also includes a very long poem, I guess you would call this. It covers the whole back cover, back sleeve of the album, some other kinds of songs, poems by Bob Dylan. Now, the other mono version I have comes from this, the original mono recordings box set. What they've done here is they've replicated the sleeve very effectively. This is one of these mini LP sleeves, and I think it looks great. It's got just a plain white inner sleeve, but then you do get the label is replicated. A lot of people say that the original mono recordings for the acoustic stuff sound better than the stereo versions. I think that's certainly the case for the debut album, and I would argue these two as well, although I have to do some more careful listening. On another side, I think it's more debatable. Here is I'll call it the original CD version that came out whenever, I guess in the 80s. What I don't like about this in terms of packaging is they didn't really imitate the original album presentation. Like, I don't know what they were going for here, but you do in the booklet, you do get the poems and the credits, and then the track list is on the back. I will say, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this original CD because it was the worst of a lot. It did not win in the shootout. I didn't think any of the songs stood out. Then we've got the original master recording. This is the stereo. And what I like about the packaging for this one is, well, there's the see, this is an SACD, obviously. You've got a gatefold here with and you got additional photographs in color. This was mastered by Rob Laverde at Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab in Sebastopol, California. And I like this photo on the back cover. And then they give you a booklet, again with track listing. The reproduction in the booklet is far superior to the original CD, and you get some additional photographs. So I thought they did a nice job with the packaging here. Little added value. So great photographs of Bob Dylan in circa 1964. Okay, so just in terms of packaging, got to go with the original vinyl for vintage value. The mono box set version does the best job of reproducing the cover as it was originally presented. This original CD just stinks, so we'll leave that aside. The Mobile Fidelity has some advantages with the booklet, the extra photos, and so forth, but they did a pretty poor job. I don't know if you can pick this up on the camera, but this cover photo looks a little bit washed out, and they reproduce it actually better on the booklet. I wish the front cover looked more like this. Let's talk about comparisons. When I first listened to the album in the car, I didn't really detect much difference between the different versions. I thought this is the kind of album where you just think, well, why do I need to bother like comparing versions? This is not an audiophile recording. But then when I went to the headphones and listened to it on my stereo, I started to hear big differences. So let's just get this old CD out of the way. The old CD is anemic. The tracks, it doesn't sound nearly as present as either of these two versions. It sounds just sort of weak and flat and not as loud, and doesn't really, nothing really stands out on it at all. It's just overall weak. So we will give this one like a low grade and move on. Now, it gets more interesting here when you compare this stereo recording to this mono recording. And remember, the vinyl is a mono copy. I would say overall, let's just compare mono to mono here. This is not the best condition record. I would generously grade it as a VG. I need to clean it a little bit more. It's certainly listenable, but it's things sound kind of muffled. There is a warmth to it. I think those of you who are disturbed by the harshness of Bob Dylan's harmonica, which is a real problem on these 60s albums, you might prefer the vinyl because it seems to like blur the edges of the harmonica a little bit. But in all other respects, the guitar doesn't really stand out very much. And I would definitely say that the mono box set version, that this surpasses the vinyl in terms of fidelity, in terms of presence, and so forth. So, and again, I don't have the Mobile Fidelity mono. I can't compare apples to apples on that one. Yeah, there's just much more oomph, much more bite to this remaster, and like I love having the vinyl just for sentimental value. Won't get rid of it, but when I want to listen to it on mono, I'm gonna be much more likely to go to the CD. Let's get into this comparison: CD versus SACD. So you do have a 16-bit CD here, and then you have the DSD. Also, this is stereo, this is mono. So here is where, when I listened to it in the headphones, I was pleasantly surprised, I guess I would say. I was thinking I was going to prefer the mono based on the fact that like the other early Bob Dylan albums sound I think better in mono, but this stereo SACD was actually my favorite of all of them. I'll try to explain why. First of all, I think they did a better job. Tom Wilson, the producer, I think he did a better job at recording the stereo here. You don't have as drastic of separation between like guitar on one channel and vocal on the other channel. So that was much less bothersome. It was much more integrated sound. And then the mono versions, I actually thought the slight separation of the instruments gave a little more breathing room in the sound presentation, whereas the mono version, like things were sort of a little heavier, somewhat possibly muddier. But I think most of this had to do with the way they transferred this, presumably from the original master tapes. And I'll just use some very subjective terms here. The Mobile Fidelity felt more musical. Bob's vocal, I was hearing like the lower register was fuller, deeper, but there was also just a great dynamic range, a great frequency range too. Like the high end was there. You could hear like the transients on like the pick on the guitar when he's strumming and things like that, and like the bite of the harmonica. And yet it wasn't as harsh as this one. This one, I would say, was maybe a little more aggressive. I think just overall this was more musical. Overall, like I felt more presence and more space in the sound stage. Part of this has to do with your preference of mono versus stereo. I think it's great to have this on mono because this was really like the preferred mix back in the day. So it's great to have that. And it's great to have a cleaner presentation than what's on my vinyl. But I think this is a very pleasant version here, and it just blows away this original CD. Like, if you're going stereo versus stereo here, this one's, I think, really worth the money. That's my shootout video. I am going to declare a winner here. I'm going to go with the Mobile Fidelity original master recording stereo, with the mono box set coming in second. A distant third place for digital would be this original CD. I don't see much purpose in getting that one unless you have no other options. And it was fun listening to another side of Bob Dylan. I will say that many times when I do these shootouts, the album sort of grows on me and gets deeper with every listen. That was certainly the case with my Greetings from Asbury Park shootout for Bruce Springsteen. But for another side of Bob Dylan, I did get a little weary listening to it again and again and again. Like, that's a sign that it's not one of his greatest albums, although there are some terrific gems on here. Like, it's an album that shouldn't be ignored. Now, I would love to compare it to the mono version of the Mobile Fidelity, and the mono of that versus the mono of this box set. I should say that the box set was mastered by Mark Wilder. So the Mark Wilder versus whoever did the mono Mobile Fidelity, I'm going to assume it was Rob Loverte. That would be interesting. So if any of you have done those comparisons, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So that's another side of Bob Dylan. Thanks for watching, and I hope you give this album a chance. It's got some really great stuff on it, and some of the lighter fare, the throwaway stuff is pretty fun too. And it's really cool to see a great artist sort of moving in a new direction, and you can see the anticipation of what's to come, which was one of the best periods in Dylan's career. Thanks for watching. Bye.